join, which is terrific. But in the meantime, we'll start talking slowly. And by the time we have more people joining, we'll be down to the good parts of the show. Thank you, everyone, for joining us this afternoon. It's really cool to see so many people interested. For those of you where this may be your first time, I'm Janet Bahima of Herzog Fox Ne'eman. We're the largest law firm in Israel, and besides international corporate transactions, I run our impact investment practice area. And for the last 3 or 4 years, we've been cooperating with SID and the Ministry of the Economy and other partners in our series, Destination Africa, Continent of Tomorrow, exploring opportunities, challenges, and partnerships. If you've been to our series before, you already knew that. Well, now we're traveling across the continent from our last West Africa program, and we've headed to East Africa. You know, during our series, we've looked at case studies in Kenya, we had a special conference on Ethiopia, and now we're doing more regional approaches. Our goal is to lead concrete opportunities and cooperation. That's what we're looking for. So, as you're already doing, feel free to use the chat to introduce yourselves, to post questions. We'll try to follow up on questions that remain. Feel free to write to me on any of your topics or feedback. I'll give you my email in the chat box. We have a couple of special guests joining us this session, which is really, really nice. We have His Excellency, the Ambassador of Kenya, Samuel Tweta, and we have His Excellency, the Ambassador of South Sudan to Israel, Wolmeyer Ariak, and we're really, really excited that they are taking the time to join us. So I think we're just going to have a great program and a great couple hours, and I will turn it over now to Alon.
אלון, לא שומעים אותך, אתה במיוט.
Which is a good point. When you're not speaking, please do go on mute. When you are speaking, please come off mute.
Yeah, so sorry. So I will do it very briefly. Thank you, Janet, and welcome all to this event. And as Janet said, this time we are in East Africa, trying to discuss direction and opportunities. And we are always happy to cooperate with Janet and with Herzog Fox Ne'eman and with the Ministry of Economy and the Foreign Trade Administration and with all the other great people who joined us today. For those of you who don't know us, so I will just say that my name is Alon and I'm the director of the Society for International Development. We are an umbrella organization of over 150 civil society organizations, private companies, government agencies, and academic programs that actively work in the field of humanitarian aid and international development. When our mission is to encourage the Israeli involvement and action in emerging markets through economic and humanitarian work. We are very happy that we have with us such great and interesting guests to join us for this session. And in order to save time, I want to give the floor to Janet to keep running this interesting webinar today. And Shana Tova, Happy New Year for all of you who will celebrate the Jewish New Year at the end of the week. Thank you.
Thank you, Alon. And now I'm just going to see, I'd like to know if we've been joined by our special guest, His Excellency, the Ambassador of Kenya. Have you joined us?
I'm here, Janet.
So nice to see you. If you'd like to say a little greetings for a word to start us off, that'd be great.
Yes, thank you. I'll do so, and more so because shortly I'll be leaving Tel Aviv for another function in Jerusalem. And mine is actually to thank you for organizing this very timely and topical conference on health, agriculture, energy, and infrastructure. I say so that it's timely and topical because speaking for Kenya, as most of us know, the focus right now is on our Vision 2030 and Big Four agenda. And the Big Four agenda is actually matters, food security is on top of the agenda, affordable health care, affordable housing, manufacturing, and of course, energy being the enabler for that. If you give me one more minute, going further, if you look at Africa, of course, the Agenda 2030 is another topical issue, and more so because of enabling eradication of poverty and hunger by the year 2030. The other larger agenda for Africa, of course, is Agenda 2063, which infrastructure is a major role, and actually the person heading this sector is our former Prime Minister, Raila Odinga. Recently also, His Excellency President Uhuru Kenyatta released an appeal to heads of state and government, member states of the International Fund for Agriculture Development, that is IFAD, making an appeal for the 12th replenishment of resources on issues of food for the period 2022. And that's why, again, I say this is very timely, very topical, and I'm glad that I saw the panel, and I'm sure the issues will be tackled as they should be. Otherwise, thank you very much. Toda raba, asante sana, and for our great Israeli people, wonderful people, Hash Sameach. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very, very much, Hag Sameach. And we really appreciate you joining. We know you have to get on the road to Jerusalem. We really appreciate you stopping by on your way.
I'll try. Thank you.
Next, I want to see if it's a little hard to see on the participants list. Do we have Our Excellency, the Ambassador to South Sudan? Ambassador Ariak, do we have you on the phone, on the Zoom? Okay, so if anybody spots him after, please let me know. Okay, and Noah, from the representing the Ministry of Economy, do you want to say a word to open up?
Thank you very much, Janet. Thank you very much for the invitation. As always, we are happy to partner up on matters that are so important to the Ministry of Economy, and we're happy to have such great partners for the way, and I'm happy to encourage the Israeli industry to develop the economic relations in East Africa. And looking forward to a great event.
Thank you very much. We're going to start actually looking at government a little bit and the role of policy before we get going into some other things. And we're going to start with a concept of a fireside chat. Now, usually in a fireside chat, you're supposed to actually be a president sitting by a fireside, a real fire. And it's gotten taken to be people sitting in nicer chairs on a platform. Now we're at the point where it's just random people. Now we're on the point where we just sort of have random people on a Zoom, many, many boxes away from each other, but we're going to do that anyway. But we are very, very honored to have Tim Bromfield with us, who's the regional director for East Africa of the Tony Blair Institute for Global Change. And he's leading the Institute's work on governance in East Africa. So we're particularly interested in hearing from him today. Tim, I believe you live in Kigali, that's right?
Not anymore. I moved to Nairobi, actually.
Oh, okay.
But I lived in Kigali for 4.5 years, so I know both Kenya and Rwanda fairly well.
Okay, and I think, right, Rwanda, you've experienced in Sierra Leone, you've done so many things, also in Uganda, you've set up a charity, Atlanta Rising, and there's just unlimited amount of things that you could tell us about. So actually, it would be great if you give us a little bit of your background, and then we can look at some questions. Before we get started, I do want to mention that last week there was the GSG, the Steering Group for Impact Investment, its global summit. And that was once called the Task Force for Impact Investment. It was really the first global organization looking at all these issues, and it was set up in about 2008, 2009. And in their summit, the head of the UNDP stressed the inability of achieving the UN Sustainable Development Goals without government involvement. At the same time, one of the speakers was David Cameron, former UK Prime Minister, and he was one of the people who launched the G8 Social Impact Task Force back in 2013. And what he said is that governments can't do it alone. You need to bring in business, big society capital, investors, everyone working together. So Tim, I'd like you to give a little bit about your background, and then I'd like you to maybe share a dilemma or a challenge that you have recently and where government policy or strategy may be influencing that challenge.
Sure. Thanks very much, Jenna. So, hi everybody. Thanks for being here today. I'm Tim Bromfield. Previously to working for the Tony Blair Institute for Global Change, I had a career in management consulting in the UK, and I worked for Accenture, if you know the company. And from there, I then founded my own organisation, which was a climate change educational campaign, and that took us around the edge of the Atlantic, and we visited some of the countries that I'd go on to work for Tony Blair. So we visited Sierra Leone and Liberia along the coast of the Atlantic, and it was actually when I was in those countries that I first met the people at the Tony Blair Institute. I was profoundly sort of affected by the access they had right at the very centre of government, and the good work that they were doing. And having sort of wrapped up this organisation, I had no other plan but to go and work for Tony Blair, and I was very fortunate that I got the job. So at the Tony Blair Institute, we provide advice to leaders on strategy and delivery on some of the most intractable problems that they face. We do this through the work of the former UK Prime Minister, Tony Blair, who works leader to leader with other heads of state. But also we have teams on the ground working in the African countries that we support. They're embedded in government ministries and agencies. They go in every day and sit down alongside their counterparts, working shoulder to shoulder on some of the challenges that government faces. Clearly, in the current environment, that's a little bit different, but they are still in the countries we're supporting. We also support countries on geopolitics, and we are encouraging economic linkages between countries. That's certainly true of linkages between Israel and Africa, where we're trying to work to support a bridge to the continent. But it's also true of other regions globally. So, for example, Israel and the Arab world. And for example, Tony Blair is in Washington, DC today for the signing of the normalization agreement with UAE, which we played a small part in. So that's sort of some of the work we do on the geopolitical side. To your question on dilemmas, I mean, there is clearly one massive dilemma that all leaders all around the world are sort of facing today, and it would sort of seem remiss not to just call that one out straight away, which is COVID-19. And global leaders have this huge sort of, I don't know if Faustian sort of decision is an expression or not, but this huge quandary between saving lives and protecting livelihoods. And where they fall in a sort of range of policy decisions related to that equation is having a profound effect on countries' success at addressing COVID-19 as an issue. So sort of beyond just saving livelihoods, they not only have to tackle the virus itself, but they also have to protect their wider health systems. They have to ensure that supply chains remain open and not sort of terribly disrupted. And they have to protect people's jobs and incomes. And you know, this has been the sort of the challenge that we've been battling with and supporting governments with since the start of the year. And we've pivoted almost all the work we're doing in Africa to focus on this question. Jai, if it's helpful, I can sort of start going into examples and make this real by talking about some of the countries in East Africa and how they're tackling it.
I think that would be great. I think it would be great to hear about something very, very specific. And at the same time, I'd also like to know if you're working, I guess you say you work with governments and in the private sector, but how that is being played out in some of these examples of the work that you're doing together.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, so I should have mentioned, so we work really at the interface between government and the private sector. So we're working in line ministries, that includes investment promotion agencies, and private sector often finds that having somebody from the institute on the government side of the table helps their experience of engaging with government, and we can provide a sort of softer landing for companies arriving. So on the sort of tangible problem, I oversee countries in East and Southern Africa. That's Ethiopia, Rwanda, Kenya, and then Mozambique and Angola, but I'll talk less about them today. Rwanda has sort of been one of the standout success stories on tackling the virus in Africa. They locked down fairly early and hard, and they ramped up their testing strategy and capacity exponentially. Very few countries in Africa were able to increase testing exponentially, and that's of course important because you need to be able to keep up with a virus which is growing exponentially. Kenya and Ethiopia actually have also succeeded in that feat. But having a robust testing strategy has given the wider world confidence that Rwanda has the virus under control. The positivity rate of cases tested positive as a percentage of tests conducted has consistently remained below 5% in Rwanda. 5% is WHO's guidance for demonstrating whether a country has control over the virus or not. And Rwanda has consistently maintained that level below 5%. They've only had 22 deaths in the country to date, which is a pretty impressive feat as well. And they've sort of drawn on some of their experience from being prepared for an Ebola epidemic across its borders in DRC last year and the year before. And they have robust health systems, which they've sort of grown over the last 20 years of government. To this point about intersect with the private sector and why all of this is so important, clearly Africa is more isolated from the global economy anyway. And the main story about Africa and COVID-19 at the moment is, well, the continent doesn't seem to be sort of suffering from COVID-19 in the same way that the rest of the world is. The mortality levels are much lower and case numbers are lower. So, you know, should governments be moving on from this threat? But the point is about confidence, that governments need to demonstrate to the wider world that they have sufficient control such that investors come again, the tourists arrive again, and that they can be reintegrated into the global economy. Now, through the crisis, we've been working with private sector because we talked about the sort of health side of the equation, but the other side is the economic side, of course. The initial sort of imperative was to support the private sector and African governments to enable the private sector to repurpose, to produce those things that were necessary to fight the virus. So we've had conversations with Israeli manufacturers of respiratory equipment and liaising with them and the government of Ethiopia, for example, about manufacturing in industrial parks in Ethiopia. We've been working on repurposing textile value chains and garment value chains to produce the PPE that governments need to protect healthcare workers. And we've also worked with the chemicals industry on how they pivot to produce the hand sanitizer and other sort of alcohol-based products which are needed. And so you have companies that were producing perfume at the beginning of the year who have now turned their production to producing sanitizer. And so this has been the sort of, if you like, one of the private sector facing sort of roles that PBI has played. Essentially, it's the same role that we play in normal times, a role of sort of investment promotion and facilitation, but it's kind of been happening on gas because the imperatives and the timelines have been so much sort of tighter and fiercer, and the sector's obviously changed to reflect private sector. Sorry, to reflect the needs of the health crisis. So I'll pause there again. I can sort of continue along this track and talk about food security and all of that sort of stuff. But Janet, I'll.
No, first of all, it's fascinating. I could just listen to you keep going for the whole, because I just think it's so important that you have an organization that is out there and doing so much important work and able to do that bridge of getting things to happen. And it's also great to hear in a country like Rwanda. I mean, here we are in Israel as we are about to in 2 days go into another full lockdown. because we've had a complete inability to gain any. We've had such a rampant amount, even though we have so much testing, whatever. We have such an out of control situation, right, with COVID-19. So to see that a country like Rwanda was able to do it not just because they're an island and they sealed off their borders, but because they were doing testing and everything else, that is just, it's really great to hear. And I guess I do see, it's interesting what you said about the economy. Obviously the sectors of tourism, whatever, in these countries are the ones that are paying a huge price immediately overnight with very little of a social net, but which creates another problem, even if maybe overall their economies have been able to withstand a lot. There are certain improvements we always like to hear about, like improvements in certain spots. Where have you seen some really good improvements over the last few years in certain things, and where do you still feel there's a lot more work to do? And I would just throw out a couple of topics that I think are important, like predictability, neutrality in a company, a lack of bureaucracy in trying to get business set up, a lack of bribery, a prioritization, government incentives. Maybe I gave you just too many to cover all at once, but in those sort of areas, where do you see in some of the countries that you're looking at in East Africa, where you see, good improvements, or where there's more work still to go?
Let me sort of talk at a high level to start off with, and then I'll try and come to some of your examples. So I think there's some themes. I think that there's been a trend from state-led to private sector-led economies in the recent sort of years. I think that related to that, countries have been really doubling down on improving the business environment, and I think the Doing Business Index, the World Bank Index, has provided a sort of lightning rod and focal point for governments to sort of unite their efforts around. And then I think linked to that, we've seen quite a lot of improvements in the drafting of investment codes across the region as well. So let me sort of just go into some of those in a bit more detail, if that's all right. On moving to private sector-led economy, I think Ethiopia is the standout example at the moment. It's announced a sort of a broad set of privatizations. It's opened up sectors of the economy which have been sort of forever closed: the energy sector, the aviation sector, legal services. What am I forgetting? Obviously, the telecom. It's probably the biggest state telecom monopoly in the world, maybe bar one. So you're seeing this big opening up in Ethiopia particularly. Then, as I said, I think the business index has, flawed as some will argue that it is, it's still provided this lightning rod of activity, and countries are taking it extremely seriously. So as a benchmark, I think Israel is currently ranked by the World Bank as the 35th best place to do business in the world. Rwanda's 38, which is a pretty impressive feat, and they take this seriously, and they've got a dedicated team at the Rwanda Development Board who work on this sort of year in, year out, and that sort of translates to a much better experience for investors. But Kenya's 56 as well. That's pretty good going. And even a country that like Ethiopia is is sort of somewhere around 150 at the moment. The Prime Minister has come out and said we will be below 100 in the ranking in the next 3 years. So it provides this sort of focus, which has been really important. And off the back of that, we're seeing huge sort of gains in FDI attraction to these countries. So Rwanda in 2019 was ranked the second best greenfield FDI destination on the continent. I think Kenya came 15th. I'm sorry, in the world, that is. Then a huge amount of work's been done on investment codes. It's not just the sort of the indicators on the index, but countries have been investing heavily in revising and improving these investment codes to, as you said, to create this greater predictability and prioritization for companies coming in. The Kenya ambassador earlier sort of helped me out by talking about the Big Four agenda in Kenya. So that's the government sending a very clear signal to investors as to what the government's priorities are, and that helps for investors to navigate the economy when they arrive. Now, there is a tension there because governments must maintain a degree of agility. And the COVID-19 crisis is a great example of why you need that agility. But even so, it sends a very clear signal as to what the priorities are. In Ethiopia as well, for example, they've recently changed their listings. They've gone from a positive listing to a negative listing approach. Essentially what that means was, historically, Ethiopia would say, these are the sectors you can come and invest in Ethiopia, and all the other ones, you know, those are not open. And they sort of describe the sector, but that created a huge amount of ambiguity, and investors struggle to navigate that. So they've now flipped it, and they've essentially said the Ethiopian economy is open. However, these are the sectors you can't invest in, and they've been very, very clear about what aspects of those sectors you can't invest in, what subsectors, and it provides much easier means of updating the listing and adding new sectors, because you know, innovation and technology is always creating new opportunities as they come about. So that's another good example, and you know, I can tell you more investment.
I'm going to
Don't let me get too carried away.
I'm going to stop for a minute on Ethiopia, actually, and say that the one thing that we still think is a little frustrating is small businesses who want to come in and do something where they need to set up a local entity. For foreigners, you still have the $200,000 requirement to bring in capital up front, and that is still makes it difficult for people to do certain projects. So hopefully with your intervention, we can still have a little bit of a little more reforms on that side of, and I understand the importance of getting in foreign currency, but it obviously could be a chilling effect to some businesses. It could be.
Absolutely. And you know, we do support the Ethiopian Investment Commission, and we can get to this, but we have an office in Tel Aviv, and we're very happy to talk to Israeli investors looking to come to Ethiopia.
Okay. And we're going to wrap up our virtual fireside chat. I enjoyed the heat between us. I think it was terrific. We really appreciate your insights. And thank you so much again for being with us. And I think it's great for all of us to know that the Tony Blair Institute has a particular interest in helping Israeli companies actually in their path to Africa and in different countries in Africa and things that they can do. So if you don't mind, I think we are going to continue to try to use you as a resource.
That's great, and we'll put up our contacts in the chat for the office in Tel Aviv as a contact point.
Great. We are now going to move to a panel, and I will ask Noah, please, to take over.
Thank you very much, Janet, and thank you, Tim, for the very interesting brief. I'm sure your position really exposed a lot of interesting challenges and opportunities in Africa in general and in East Africa in particular. We're now going to drill down a little bit more and meet a very interesting panel of people to discuss challenges and opportunities in East Africa. I think that one of the only advantages of these very strange times that we live in is the ability to bring people together who could not have met otherwise in the physical space. I noticed in the chat that we have people from Ethiopia, Rwanda, South Sudan, Kenya, and of course Israel. Each of these countries has its own unique characteristics, needs, fields of interest and challenges, and the big title East Africa is a very large umbrella, and I'm sure that today we are hoping to clarify some of these changes and some of these differences between those countries. While some of the countries in East Africa are bordering the ocean and have economies that are based on trade and the sea trade, other countries don't have a port and they have different challenges. While Kenya prides itself with the great fintech industry, Ethiopia holds on its flag the agriculture sector. So when looking into each of these countries, you can really see that the opportunities are wide, and the discussion could go much further. I think today we will ask our speakers to elaborate a little bit more on these differences. I would like to really welcome three great individuals that are here with us today. Mr. Guido Boysen, leading Vital Impact Facility from Vital Capital. Mr. James Origa, Program Coordinator of the WRG20 from the Kenya platform. And Mr. Sehol Trusau, a Senior Investment Advisor to Ethiopia Investment Commission. Thank you very, very much for joining us today. Please unmute yourself and prepare for our first question, which is all about trends. We would love to hear from your point of view, what are the growing trends in your areas of work? What are the new technologies that are interesting? What are the new challenges that you see uprising? Mr. Boysen, please feel free to start.
Yeah, hi, thank you. And yeah, glad to be here. It's a privilege. Yeah, some of the key trends that we see as investor in the region. I would say the first one is the regional integration in East Africa, which is a steady, slow progress happening often out of sight, but nonetheless very important. The East African community, I think, is making huge progress, and with that, there's a lot of cross-border trade. I think that presents opportunities. So companies in Kenya or in Uganda, they now look beyond their domestic markets and really look at the region as a whole. So that is an interesting trend, and it leads to the emergence of really regional players. The other thing I would point out is a lot of businesses are in transition, generational transition. A lot of businesses in the region, and in particular in Kenya, in Uganda, Tanzania, were started in the 50s and the 60s by a generation of entrepreneurs, and who are now handing over to the next generation. And I think the next generation tends to be a lot more internationally oriented, are willing to work with outsiders, are willing to embrace different technologies. And so these businesses are really in transition. And I think, Israeli expertise, for example, can bring a lot to those businesses in terms of, entering into the next decade. So I would point out those two trends are interesting, just to start off with.
Thank you very much. We will go further into some of the things that you mentioned a little bit later on. Mr. Origa, please, the stage is yours.
Hi, good evening, everyone. This is James speaking from Nairobi, and I'll speak more particularly around some of the opportunities that you see emerging in the environment, water, sanitation space. I mean, it's not a secret. I mean, all the countries in the region are currently facing increasing water scarcity. Kenya is already at below the 1,000 water scarcity threshold. Tanzania the same, and it's a common trend. So one of the emerging opportunities that you see in that space is, supporting the government, to respond to that, increasing scarcity. One of the things that you see emerging across all the countries, there's a paradigm shift, a departure from a linear water paradigm where water is used once and then discharged. And there's a transition towards a circular economy paradigm in water supply and wastewater management and sanitation provision. So some of the opportunities we see, opportunities in places that can help government water utilities to reduce water loss. Non-driven water remains still very high for most urban water utilities. So if private sector can come up with, technologies, and going beyond technology, but even to the business model, there's a traditional input-based engineering, procurement, contracting model to such issues. But one of the opportunities that we see emerging is where there's a longer term, performance-based business engagement between the private sector and water utilities to design, get involved in the whole system design, recommending very specific technologies that can help water utilities to reduce their water use. We see a lot of unexplored opportunities in efficient irrigation technologies. There's a big move to transform the smallholder farmer value chain to support smallholder farmers, get access, financing, and access to very efficient irrigation technology. As you're aware, I think across all the counties, more than half of the agriculture is mostly smallholder farmers. So, working with these smallholder farmers, to improve, to be able to access, more water efficient irrigation technologies. The same even with industrial water management, as the colleague from the Tony Blair Foundation had highlighted earlier. There's a lot of concerted efforts to improve industrial growth across all the counties, and one of the big agendas in Kenya is increasing the share of manufacturing, the GDP, and that means there will be a lot of more water required for industrial production. So supporting, industries to put up, more water efficient devices and technology. I think there's a great opportunity there that can help contribute towards, managing the imminent water scarcity. Technologies that drive a circular economy resource where you capture and reuse water, sanitation products, and lastly, one of the other things in terms of sanitation. If you look across all the countries, access to sanitation remained comparatively low compared to water. In Kenya alone, only 70% of the population have access to sewers. The same is the case in Tanzania, where out of the 26 regional water authorities, only 11 of them have any kind of sewer system. So there's a big opportunity, in the off-grid sanitation market, because there's been a trend where there's a lot of more government investment in improving water infrastructure, leaving a gap in sanitation. So we see an opportunity for the private sector to come in very strongly, to partner with the government agencies to make more sanitation products, within the house, fecal sludge management technologies that can enable, a lot more people to have access to sanitation services. And lastly, in terms of, advancing real-time water quantity and quality, data collection and information management systems, you realize one of the biggest challenges in the region is, the kind of information used to make policy decisions is a little bit inadequate. So if there's an opportunity to come up with new systems for collecting and analyzing both quantity and quality data related to water resources, and so that the government can be more informed in terms of the policy decisions that they make to advance the sector. Let me pause at that. I think we can discuss more as we proceed. Okay. Over to you.
Thank you very much. That was very very interesting. I would like to ask the same question to Mr. Trusao.
Hi, thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. In terms of trends, as my friend from Tony Blair Institute has highlighted, Ethiopia is open for business, meaning the country has been a closed economy for many decades. And recently, after the new administration has taken over, we had a total of 8 laws and 40 procedural and administrative reforms enacted, all in the hopes of promoting private investments and private sectors. So in Ethiopia, the trends I see is across many different sectors. There's significant number of investment opportunities for investors in the manufacturing, agribusiness, ICT, tourism, pharmaceuticals, and mining sectors. These are the pillars or the priority sectors for the country. And anyone interested within these sectors, I think they'll be able to find tremendous opportunities, but also be able to receive generous incentives that the government has highlighted. All of this is because Ethiopia has ambition to become a middle-income economy by 2025. And in order for that to happen, we have to have significant efforts to improve the investment climate, which we've been doing. I believe Ethiopia is on the cusp of a great and positive change. And these changes would not have been expected as little as 2 years ago. But from the rapid economic policy, regulatory reforms, massive privatization of state-owned enterprises, as well as an administration determined to place Ethiopia as the top 100 doing business ranking by 2022. I see the trend moving towards a more friendly for private sector investments within the country. Also, with the onset of the Africa-wide African Continental Trade Agreement, we are, as a country, anticipating to have more robust competition among our neighbors, Kenya, Rwanda, and others in the region. And as such, we're preparing to make sure that when our economy does open up and our sectors open up for foreigners, that we are in a better position to be able to fight off, at least prepare ourselves from that perspective. I think it's mentioned already, but the privatization of the telecom and other closed sectors, as well as the completion of the Great Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, are going to put Ethiopia on the map for the investment destination for the continent. I believe the trends that we're going to see is that more of the sectors opening up, and we are moving a lot more closer to technology-driven growth. And as such, I know a lot of Israeli firms are very savvy with technology and other things of that nature. And I find that there's going to be significant opportunities from that side. Again, Ethiopia is open for business, and hopefully I'm here today to help you understand how you could take advantage of these opportunities. One of the participant had asked on the chat that it's $250,000 for an investment to come in as a minimum investment. That's actually $200,000, and if you have local partners that you can work with, that could be reduced to $150,000 or even $100,000. So I'll leave you some of my details on chat, and you can feel free to contact me, and I'll be able to assist you from that front. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Trusau. While you guys were talking, I noticed that the chat is very chatty, and many people have joined us and introduced ourselves. So it's really nice to see, and I'm sure that whoever's interested could follow and meet new people and follow up in the conversations later on. For all the Israeli companies and organizations that are here with us today, I'd really like to ask you, what are the big do's and taboos in your areas of expertise? What do you think are the essentials for companies and organizations looking into operating in East Africa, and particularly in your country? And what did you see were the worst mistakes that people have made? Maybe choose one of each example. Mr. Boysen, we're here with you.
All right, that's an interesting question for sure. I think probably the biggest success stories are companies that have come to East Africa and have really localized their value proposition. I think where mistakes have been made, where companies have failed, is to come in with a solution that works in the country where they're from, for example, Israel, and take that, implement it exactly East Africa without considering local circumstances. And I think we've seen in the past some failed efforts. South Africa, which has been an important investor in Africa for a very long time historically, I think have been very successful in some markets. Telecoms, MTN, for example, has been very successful in places like Uganda, in Nigeria. But they also had some problems. Some of the retail chains haven't really done so successfully coming from South Africa into the East African market. So it is important to really understand the local market and build those local relationships and adjust whatever product or service you have to adjust that according to the needs in East Africa. I think, one trend that I didn't mention in the introduction is the so-called emerging middle class. And there's a lot of talk about, an emerging middle class that have massive spending power. I think maybe a word of caution, it's still relatively small in East Africa. Even in the more developed economies like Kenya, spending power is still quite limited. It's heavily concentrated in urban centers. Relatively speaking, the middle class is still quite small. So, one also has to come in with the right price point to make your product or service attractive. So I think, yes, it's all about localization. I think, Israel and many other countries, they face, of course, their own unique challenges, and they've come up with solutions that it might be replicable to some extent, but it's always important to customize this.
Thank you very much. That's a very, very valid point, and really relates to what Sevol was saying a little bit earlier about partnering up with the local partner, and how the government really encourage international businessmen to find local partners and work with them, and the benefits that they receive from doing so. Mr. Origa, what's your point on this matter?
So sorry, no, I missed that from. I lost my connection for a moment. Would you say that again?
We are asking about the essentials, the must-dos for the Israeli companies and organizations. What do you think are the things they have to consider and do on the way of entering East Africa, in Kenya in particular in your case? And what have you seen were mistakes that companies have made on the way? Maybe give one example of each.
I think for Kenya, for us, we boast of a very, free market. The conditions for entry and exit are quite straightforward. There's a website, Kenya Investment Authority, that is dedicated, to providing a lot of the detailed information related to doing business in Kenya. So someone can just click on Kenya Investment Authority. When you go to that website, you get a lot of information that direct you to the necessary permits that you can access. The government has done quite a lot to be very efficient in terms of business registration and permit issues. A lot of these things you can do very fast, within a few minutes, online, and things like that. So when someone goes to that site, you get a lot of that information. Some of the things that you need to be aware of. I know a lot of the Israeli companies, and not just Israeli, other foreign companies that I've seen around, they have kind of franchises or partnership with local companies to distribute their products and things like that. So I've had situations where a lot of people have been banned in terms of establishing those franchises and partnerships. So it's something that you have to do a lot of due diligence to make sure that you have the right partner, you get in the right partnership. Just like, any other place, there are a lot of, con men around who are just looking to make quick killings without putting in their sweat. So you have to be wary of those and always, undertake a lot of due diligence to ascertain some facts and before you get into a partnership with a local, franchise or distributor. Yeah. Back to you now.
Thank you, James. Thank you. Sehol, as a senior investor advisor, I'm sure you'll have great tips for our guests today.
Yes, I do. My first tip is don't go to Kenya, come to Ethiopia. We're better. I'm just kidding. No, in all honesty, I agree a lot with what Guido and my colleague James were talking about, which is everything that you do has to be in the local context. Regardless of how successful you are, whether in Israel or any other country, the situation on the ground in country is very different. So do not be very arrogant, even though you're the best at it, wherever you're coming from, right? So second thing is to also have as much as possible, a local partner, if not a local partner, but somebody that could show you around the way in terms of the operations aspect. East African markets or the entire African continent is a very complex place to do business. And if you don't understand on a daily basis what goes on, you can easily get distracted and lose out. Another tip that I could comment on is for any investors out there to be able to put pressure on your government through their economics officers, consulate officers, to be able to provide you with as much information as possible. I think there has always been a gap between two countries in terms of trade activities. And a lot of the reason that is because of the relationship that does not exist or the lack of, I guess, strengthening relationship that exists in terms of trade activity. So as investors, you have the right to demand not only from your own government from Israel, but also from Ethiopian embassy or the Kenyan embassy or somebody from Rwanda, whichever country you're interested in, to pressure them to be able to give you as much details and information as possible, because that's the first line of defense. So keep them on their toes. And last tip is please stick to what you know and what your experience is in. Although African markets offer a lot of opportunities, it's like a kid going into a candy store. You cannot choose between which opportunity you want to get into, but if you stick to what you know, what your experience is, and you have connections with the value chain, you should be able to do very well from that aspect.
Thank you very much. I hope our audience is taking notes and writing, because these tips that we just received worth a lot of money. I know I have been taking notes, and I will only share them with people I really care about. I would like to please continue to the million-dollar question. When looking into working in Africa in general, East Africa in particular, the business model is something that is very, very meaningful and important on a way to doing business well in these countries. So I would like to ask you, what do you see as a successful financial model? Something that companies can look into and explore when working in Africa. You've mentioned some things in your earlier answers relating to working with local partners and benefits that the government is providing, and some various partnerships between the private and the governmental sector. I'm not going to steal your answers, but if you could please elaborate a little bit more on the financial models. And of course, we are always happy to hear from your angle what are the investment opportunities that are out there for companies looking into working in Africa, investment and funding opportunities.
And now, and gentlemen, I'm going to really challenge you on that, as if it's not a broad enough question. We're going to give each of you 40 seconds to answer, and then we're going to move on to the next part of our program.
We already agreed that we're going to steal each of them for another session of 2 hours and have our guests interrogate them. So please, Guido, the stage is yours.
All right, 40 seconds. Well, the fund that I'm running, they provide, or we provide loans to companies in certain sectors in East Africa. So that's certainly something one can explore. But there's good local banking sector, and then there's many funds that are active in East Africa, whether it's venture capital, private equity, more impact-focused funds. There's actually quite a number of local funding options, but certainly also make sure you consider Vital Capital's Impact Relief Fund. That's it, 40 seconds.
You have 10 seconds left.
All right.
Thank you. Maybe James would use your 10 seconds. James, please go ahead.
Okay, I think in my earlier introduction, I alluded to some of the business opportunities that you see, but one area that I want to emphasize is in the area of off-grid sanitation solutions. There is virtually no sewerage coverage, and the in all practicalities, I don't think we'll see a lot of large sewerage infrastructure projects. So that leaves a very big opportunity in terms of providing sanitation solutions to populations living in off-grid solution. That can either be apartments or gated communities, and also in the low income settlement areas. So I think that's a big business opportunity. And the model, one of the emerging models, that it's something that is being championed by the World Bank, and the government is very keen on it, promoting public-private partnerships. So if an investor can find a model that goes just beyond delivering technology, but providing more of a medium-term service agreement with the public water utility, or a particular, even private property developers. The construction sector is very booming in Kenya, and property developers are keen to see more service provision arrangement rather than just providing hit and run products. So I think that's one particular thing that I can encourage investors to look into, those who are interested in coming to the Kenyan space. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you, James. Sehol is our representative of Ethiopia. We're happy to hear your point of view, and also if you could elaborate on the unique case of Ethiopia and instructions on how to look and work with the foreign exchange policy.
Sure. I was afraid you were going to ask that, so I'll address it anyhow. No, in Ethiopia, there's a lot of financing available per se. There's traditional debt, equity, there's venture capital, and a small aspect that is starting now. But all type of blending financing should be available. So what I'm about to tell you should also address the issue of foreign currency. So if your business model is to serve the local market, then I would take as much loan as possible from the local financing institutions, local banks. If you are servicing the export market and you have a lot of export opportunities available, then I would say that I would go and take out loan from abroad, because it's much cheaper. So in Ethiopia, financing traditional debt financing interest rates are high, somewhere between 9 to 12%, depending on the type of activities and obviously the length of the term that you're looking at. But now, because of the foreign exchange shortages, the National Bank of Ethiopia has now allowed investors to bring in foreign debt, number one. Number two, they're even allowing local banks, private banks, to borrow in foreign currency from abroad and be able to distribute to local companies. So it all depends on your appetite for risk, but I would say if you're servicing the local market, you could easily make up for it by looking at financing options from a local perspective. But if you have export-oriented businesses, then you have a slew of opportunities to be able to borrow from a local bank, from a foreign bank, as well as be able to tap into equity financings that are available. 40
Thank you.
seconds.
Thank you very, very much. We really appreciate keeping up with the times, and really your informative and interesting answers, I'm sure, gave a lot of information and food for thought for the people who are here with us today. So I would like to really thank you for joining us today and sharing from your knowledge and experience. I am sure that people would like to connect with you after. I know that we would love to stay in touch and continue our great relations in the future. As a finalizing sentence, I will say that the Israeli Ministry of Economy and the Israeli Foreign Affairs have boots on the ground in several countries in East Africa, and we are always happy to invite people to opportunities and events such as this one, and help with any of the needs of the Israeli companies and organizations, and promoting the trade between Africa and Israel. So I'm going to put in our information, and please feel free to connect with us. Janet, I'm going to give the stage to you. Thank you very much, and everyone have a great New Year, wherever you are on the globe.
Great. Noah, thanks so much. First of all, great job. And it's great to have the Ministry of Economy with so much backing for all of our efforts here. This is the time, even though you're all on mute, that everyone's going to applaud the panel because it was super interesting. They did a great job. So everyone take to yourself a second to just applaud. And next, we're going to hear from Reuven Kanfi from SkyLimit on tenders and business opportunities. So let's take a few minutes and hear about something extremely important. Reuven, I can see you, but I can't hear you.
Okay, now you hear me.
Now I do.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Reuven Kanfi from SkyLimit Company, and I am very happy to take part in this important webinar. First of all, I would like to apologize to the non-Hebrew speaking participant, although my presentation written in English, but I will present it in Hebrew in favor of the Israeli company, just to make it more easier and convenient, if you don't mind.
We do have a lot of people on who have joined from different countries, including in Africa. So whatever effort you can make would be appreciated.
Okay. Do you see the presentation? So shall I give it in Hebrew or in English? Or
I think a lot of people would appreciate it in English. And we understand you might be able to speak faster with the time you have, but I think it'd be more important to have all our guests understand.
Since my time is very, very limited, I prefer to do it in Hebrew so I can go through all the presentation.
Right. Unfortunately, we have so many, we have over 100 people on the line, and many of them are actually have taken the time to come in and join us from Africa. So thank you.
Okay, no problem.
Do it in English. If anybody doesn't know English very well, you shouldn't do business in Africa.
Correct. Okay, direction and opportunity in East Africa. First of all, talking about East Africa, we are talking about main 7 countries like Ethiopia, South Sudan, Uganda, Kenya, Rwanda, Burundi, and Tanzania. And usually we don't speak about the other country like Djibouti, Eritrea, and Somalia. It's not less relevant to this webinar. Some highlights about the region. Among the fastest growing economy in the world, Kenya is the financial and logistical hub of the region. The population growth is about 3% per year. It's almost 3 times more than the global average. In East Africa, mainly in the urban area, we can find inexpensive but yet very and well-educated workforce. The rural population in East Africa is about 77%, which is Burundi is the highest, 87%, and Tanzania is 66%. The other countries are in between. And this fact, and we'll see it later, will lead to the main investment in East Africa in several areas like water, education, sanitation, and so on. In East Africa, there are many good investment opportunity, and the government in East Africa are very encouraging investment opportunity. Anti-corruption policies are very adopted in East Africa by all the governments in order to attract investors and to keep them in the ground. The population in East Africa now, we are talking about 327 million, end of 2019, with 150 million in Ethiopia, about 60 million in Tanzania, 54 million in Kenya. So Ethiopia, Kenya, and Tanzania are altogether about 75% of the population in East Africa, while the projected number in 2015 will be about 880 million population in East Africa, which is huge number. Now let's go briefly about the division of the countries and the future development. As some people before mentioned it, the vision 2030 for Kenya is to be a competitive and prosperous nation with high quality of life, and this will be achieved through tourism, agriculture, manufacturing, investment in infrastructure like road, railways, and so on. The energy sector will be put on focus, of course, technology and innovation, land reform and security, mainly adopted some ICT technology for crime detection and prevention, reforms in prisons, and some more activities. Uganda Vision 2040, it transforms Uganda into a modern and prosperous country, focused on agriculture, oil and gas, energy, transportation, infrastructure, mining, industrialization, and technology, engineering, and innovation. Rwanda 2025, to develop Rwanda, transforming Rwanda into knowledge-based competitive economy, and this will be achieved through the service sector, more investment in the healthcare and human resources development, in the infrastructure, energy, transport, water and sanitation, telecommunication, and of course, agriculture. Tanzania 2025, the vision is to be a modern country, and this will be achieved through the private sector stimulation, service sector like healthcare, tourism, education, to substantial investing in the industrial sector, and the infrastructure like energy, transport, water and sanitation, and of course, telecommunication. As for Ethiopia, the growth and transformation plan, the aim of the GTP is to transform Ethiopia to be in industrialization country, and by that to significantly improve the country economy. And this will be achieved through foreign investment in agriculture, focus on natural resources, increase of road networks, railway line, power generation and power distribution, and renewable energy. Remember that we spoke about the rural area. For example, in Ethiopia, 80% of the population lives in rural area. So there is a lot of focus in the rural area to improve the life of the people there. South Sudan, relatively a new country of 12 million, although the area is a huge area, and most of the fields are still unexplored. So the opportunity there will be in mining, oil exploration, agriculture, energy, tourism, and healthcare. This is about the vision of the countries. Now, we have mentioned already PPP project, public-private partnership. Most of the countries in East Africa are putting a lot of efforts and giving priority to PPP projects, where the investor and the vendor are investing the money, operating the project, generating the income, sometimes sharing with the government, depend if it's revenue sharing agreement or can be a BOT or any other forms of PPP agreement. At the end of the period, the end of the concession, the assets is transferring back to the government. The most common area for PPP projects are the infrastructure and transportation, like roads, bridges, railway, ports, and so on. Correctional facilities, education, housing and accommodation, health sector, like healthcare facilities, equipment lease, healthcare insurance, energy, all kind of energy and renewable energy, and environment, including water supply, solid waste management, and other type of project related to water. Who we are? SkyLimit. SkyLimit established founded in 2003, and SkyLimit is a leading research company giving research, marketing and strategic research to Israeli company that looking overseas and want to expand their activities overseas. In 2008, the company launched the platform Israel Exporter, which is a unique platform to promote Israeli goods, technology, trade relation, cooperation, and so on. In the field of research, SkyLimit are giving a study and research for company with very focused on target country. Meaning, if a company wants to operate and to start activities in specific country, then SkyLimit give a study and research in this particular country, depend on the product, depend on the sector, but everything is related to the country and what will fit the company. And this will include feasibility study to work in this country, target market research and analysis, including who are the competitors for the same product in this country, who are the distributors in this country, including the distributor of the competitors. Sometimes it's good to know, and sometimes to make use of the same distribution line and distributors. In terms of business development, opening a new business opportunity, opening doors, arranging a meeting, going with the meeting. By the way, the company is able to give services in 21 different languages. It means any and every language that you can think about it, and everything according to the target markets, and of course the LinkedIn management and generating opportunity through the LinkedIn. Recently, the company has founded the International Tenders Program, which give a very, let's say, unique means, unique tools to the company that wishing to operate in the international market, and not only in East Africa, of course. This program and this platform, it has more than 3 million live business opportunity and tenders regularly, and every day there are more than 25,000 new opportunities in the system. Those information and opportunity comes from various sources, so you can benefit from all the information according to what is the product that you sell, in which sector, which country, and you can go, you can drill down and look at the system to what you need. Now, we spoke about the opportunity, the division of the countries, we spoke about the opportunity in East Africa, and we spoke about the International Tender Program. Now look how we see if we combine all together. From the International Tender Program, as of 14th of September, meaning yesterday, in East Africa, we had 2,774 tenders, live open tenders, and various business opportunity in different sectors. Here I highlighted those sectors that we are going to discuss the next session. The healthcare, 87 opportunities, agriculture, 134, energy, 141. You can see that the infrastructure and construction is the largest with 878 business opportunities. You have consultancy, 291 opportunities, in IT, 245, water and sanitation, 246, and there are many more that I did not mention here, that the quantity was quite less. Of course, most of the opportunity and most of the tender are irrelevant to the Israeli companies, since some of them are domestic and local. But even though if we take only 20% of this opportunity, it's a huge amount of opportunity and option for Israeli companies to expand their activities in Africa.
Reuven, that was absolutely terrific. Your English was absolutely fine, great. It was all very clear. I think this is tremendous opportunity and a great resource for us to know about. And I'm sure that when we do our hashtag competition, anyone using the hashtag will get a special discount on your services.
Let me finish with the last slide. Okay. If you have any question, you need more information, or if you need and you want this presentation, please send us an email, call us to Sky Limit, send us an email, and we will send you the presentation.
Thank you so much. Leave that slide for a minute while I explain what happens next, give people a chance to copy it. Okay. We're now going to be broken into our roundtables, and the way this works on Zoom, it takes a little bit of time. You will all be given an invitation to join a roundtable based on your preferences when you registered. So you will just have to accept join. It does take a few minutes for it to work itself out, so be patient. While you're in the roundtable, if you want to change, if something goes wrong, if you were assigned the wrong one, you will have an option of leave. If you push leave, it'll give you an option either to leave altogether or to go back to the main room. If you go back to the main room, then Maria will be there, our woman behind the scenes who arranges everything for us, and she'll assign you where you need to go. So let's, again, thank everybody so much for joining, and good luck all of us getting to our right roundtables.